Hey, what's going on, Archons? Just sitting over here enjoying some coffee out of my Chelsea mug because they just whooped Porto's ass today, sort of. And staring at this gorgeous Maverick Fandangle, which you may have been familiar with if you saw my recent Coaches Collection episode. And this is not the card of the week because it was already talked about in the Coaches Collection. But I've had some interesting comments about this card, both when I posted it on Facebook, while on stream, and just in the comments. So I wanted to kind of address the Maverick Fandangle in the room. And so the thing that people were saying was that while you have 4 Ember or more, your non-untamed creatures enter play ready. That is what the text states. People felt that the text should actually state your non-dis creatures enter play ready, or if this was in Logos, your non-Logos creatures. So it correlated with the text as it was intended. So the house that Fandangle belongs to is the house that does not activate it. And they wanted that for some reason. I don't know why. I'm assuming partly because they see that's how the card plays, because my favorite part about this particular Maverick Fandangle is that my disc creatures and Fandangle itself enter play ready when 4 or more Ember are in my pool. And it's the best part of it because it allows you to have that big turn where you get to reap out or fight or whatever and act right away without allowing your opponent that chance to respond. Where normally if you played on an Untamed turn, you're going to be playing this card, your opponent has a chance to get rid of it, and then it may not have any effect at all. This guarantees you to have a turn with your Fandangle if you meet the criteria of 4 or more Ember, and that is why I absolutely love it. And I do hope that they do not procedurally generate the text to change to match the house that it's in, like people are suggesting. I know my man Ban Solitude, Daniel, was saying he wished it was like that in other Mavericks because of the, I think he said Neutron Shark. Yeah, he wanted his Neutron Shark, so when you flip over and it's a non-Logos card or whatever, that one, so it would go off, and that's why he wanted the text to change, which I can see. I can't remember the text of Neutron Shark exactly for that parameter, but that's what he was hoping, basically, was that it would activate for Neutron Shark and you could have those cool turns. Now, moving on, I will not be doing the card of the week to kick off the episode like I normally do. I've had a request from my man Poutrick to throw it at the end so that it can be remembered more to talk about. So I will be doing the card of the week at the end. Yes, I purposely showed you the back of the card there. But this week, what I wanted to talk about was the use of DoK to help formulate strategy with the deck. This is a topic that I have kind of talked about in the past. It's when you're lacking something. But I have a new perspective on it because as I've had my musings, as I've had my experience with those aspects of the game, like playing decks that are lacking and having that recognition of the lack within the deck, I've noticed that I've actually pivoted my play and really benefited from understanding what it means. So when you see a stat in DoK, that doesn't mean that a deck is bad. Well, it might, but it doesn't necessarily mean a deck is bad. Like, for example, what I'm going to be talking about here is my man Scuzzy and I were playing some lunchtime KeyForge the other day, and I said, hey, I'm just going to grab a deck from my collection. I want to go through my Coach Collection account and just play every deck that I own, type of thing. And there was a deck that I hadn't done, so I'm like, let's do this one. So I played the deck and I looked at it on DoK just to get an idea for stats before I play, so I would know how to play the deck. This is the key part here. And I noticed that under Ember Generation, it had an 8.4 for Ember Generation. That is astonishingly low. And then I looked at the creature count. It had something like 24 creatures. And I was like, okay. Had Brobnar in it as well, which I'll tell you, put in some work. This was a Worlds Collide deck. And so when I saw that set, I was like, I knew right away, I'm like, I cannot learn to play this deck or figure out this deck by just playing cards. It's not going to work. Because it has such low Ember Generation, I'm actually going to need to utilize those creatures I put on board. So because I saw that low Ember Generation stack under DoK and a high creature count, I knew that once I had creatures on board, I may not cycle my hand because I need to keep using those creatures to get the outcome of what I want, and that's to generate Ember, or else I'm not going to forge keys. So sometimes you can't go with that rule of you must just go board plus hand, play out cards type of thing. Sometimes you need to utilize your board, maybe play just one card, and have that less efficient cycling turn so that you can get to meet that criteria or that goal that exists within the lack of the deck stats that you see in DoK. Now, another side to this as well is low Ember control. I know I've ranted about this a few times within AOA, how there is that lack of it, and I've been actually able to be very successful with some decks understanding that it has low Ember control. Because the same sort of thing, I know that my opponent getting in check is not necessarily what matters in terms of I gotta find answers, take them off check. When you know that you're not going to be finding those answers, you actually can have a more free play of making decisions that are constantly advancing you gaining Ember. So instead of making those plays that are like, okay, I need to set up so I can control Ember, yada, 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 I'm actually now making plays that are more like, okay, what house will I call that will generate the most Ember each turn? And that is how I make my plays. The cycling doesn't matter as much. The ways to basically get Ember control, if you know those cards exist, you're not trying to find those. You're just looking at what do I have on board and in hand that's going to generate the most Ember, turn after turn, and move forward. And I've had quite a bit of success with it. That being said, these decks are a little less consistent unless you have something special, which is going to be part of the card of the week of explaining why. Because if you don't have them, you're going to be short, you're going to be losing maybe more. But when you have that mentality of knowing and that understanding, it allows for the freedom to play the way the deck has been procedurally generated. And every deck is going to present a new challenge, or maybe it's going to have a new ease of play if they do have a boon of a certain stat. So you just got to keep these factors in mind. So when you look at DoK, don't go, oh, this has no Ember, it sucks, or this has no Ember control, it sucks. This has no... I'm going to be honest, I think the board control one is actually the hardest one. When you don't have board control, I think that is the one stat that you know you're going to run into problems, because that is something you cannot mitigate. No matter the fighting, all that, I have some decks I've seen where if I know your deck doesn't have board control and I can get on board, I just won't let you get creatures out. I'll actually sacrifice a turn of reaping and fight your board because you can't deal with my board, and I'm keeping... it's like if it's a game of numbers and attrition, so I'm putting more out and you're getting less out, I'm just going to end up edging you out over time. So that is the one thing that I find when that lacks, you can have a serious problem. But again, you can still get around it. There's a lot of decks that don't have crazy board control, but now the way the game is being played and the way Mass Mutation and World Collide have presented themselves, I find that stats can sometimes be the detriment, and you end up losing or falling behind as a result. But I don't think I've really explored the lack of board control that well, to be completely honest. I have been exploring the other two I mentioned, but I do have a deck that happens to have a 0 on board control, like not a single way to deal with a creature. So I may take that deck through its paces to try and learn that a little bit more. So that's this week's topics, and now on to the card of the week. So this week I have Information Officer Gray. This card, I absolutely love it. It's a Star Alliance creature from Worlds Collide with a 4 power that says play, fight, reap. You may reveal a non-Star Alliance card from your hand. If you do, archive it. So the reason why I love Information Officer Gray is because it actually provides the ability to do some really interesting things at different points of the game. For example, the deck this is in has multiples for days. Like, I've actually never seen a deck that has multiples, just like a consistency basically of you're going to get certain cards. And it's absolutely wild, and it cycles so well. It will be the card, this is Comrade... Oh, I'm not going to say the whole name because I want it to be a surprise. But this will be the Coach's Collection for the week, will be the deck that this came from, because I've been playing it a lot lately, and I'm having a ton of fun with it. But the reason why I like Information Officer Gray is because turn 1, you play an Information Officer Gray. Guess what? You're now putting another card out of your hand. So that means you're going to draw more. And it's really good when you have specific cards that require setup. So if you have a Worlds Collide Brobnar, for example, heaven forbid, and you have a flex in there, a barn raising, so many cards that are so situational within Worlds Collide Brobnar, Information Officer Gray will give you the opportunity to put those cards away and grab them later when they're going to be more efficient. Same thing with like a Ghost Hawk, Song of the Wild, Low Dawn, like all those types of cards that require maybe a little bit of setup. Even if you have EE on the fringes, it's really great to put away some discards and then you can come back to it later and have that ability to pull them to have those really big EE turns once you get E on the fringes. I think it's such a great card. It just gives you so much extra added efficiency, and oddly enough, I feel like Information Officer Gray sometimes flies under the radar because there are things like Helmsman Spears, you have Medic Ingrams, you have Kirby's, and those just feel like much greater threats in comparison to Gray, so it allows you to execute that game plan. So I find it such a fantastic card. Let me know your thoughts on Information Officer Gray, because I just think this card has been so good and it's been putting in a lot of work for me to cycle and find my deck to move forward in a way. So let me know your thoughts. And as always, please become a Patreon supporter. I'm opening decks, a lot of decks. I have tons. Like, I don't know if you can see behind me here, but here are some boxes that still need to be opened. And I want to start giving these away because I have too many decks. And I just need some Patreon supporters, not because I necessarily am like, oh, I want more money. It's actually because I'm going to be paying for the shipping. So if I give away 4 decks every month, that's going to be roughly between $60 to maybe $20 in shipping, depending on how I go about doing it. So I just want to be able to cover my costs, and I want to give away these decks to you guys because I really appreciate everyone's support throughout my content creation. I'm absolutely loving doing this. I'm loving the enthusiasm of people appreciating me creating a love for the game, because I do absolutely love this game. KeyForge came into my life during a very hard time, and it literally gave me something to focus on and really enjoy and be a part of just one of the most outstanding gaming communities that I have personally ever been a part of. There's bar none, nothing better than this, and I've even brought people into the game who say the same thing. So with that being said, please do like and subscribe, and as always, may your ember never be stolen and your keys forged promptly. Have a good one.